Dr. Mingy Kim pulled her thick jacket tighter as she walked across the cold desert floor toward the giant radio telescope. The night air in California was freezing, and her breath came out in small white clouds. She had been working the overnight shift at the Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex for 3 years now, and most nights were exactly the same. She would sit in the control room, watch the computer screens, and listen to the endless static from outer space. Tonight felt different somehow, but Minji could not explain why. Maybe it was because the desert was unusually quiet, or maybe it was because she had drunk too much coffee. She climbed the metal stairs to the control room and turned on all the equipment. The massive dish outside began to move slowly, pointing toward different parts of the sky. Mingy put on her headset and started her usual routine. She checked the computer programs that were always searching for signals from space. Most of the time, they only found natural sounds from stars and planets. Sometimes, they picked up signals from Earth satellites or radio stations. But those were easy to identify and ignore. 2 hours into her shift, something unusual appeared on her screen. There was a pattern in the static that did not look natural. It was coming from a specific point in space, very far away. Minji leaned forward and adjusted the controls to get a cleaner signal. Her heart started beating faster as she realized what she was looking at. This was not random noise from a star or planet. This was clearly made by intelligent beings. The pattern repeated every few seconds, and it was getting stronger. Minji quickly started recording everything and ran the signal through the computer. Programs that could turn alien signals into human language. The translation took almost an hour, but when it finished, Minji felt her blood turn cold. The message was clear and terrifying. Warning, they hunt by signal. Do not respond. Silence is survival. Coordinates follow. We're the last of Kepler-4 to be. Our mistake was answering. Minji read the message 3 times to make sure she understood it correctly. Someone or something 847 light-years away was trying to warn Earth about hunters who tracked civilizations by their radio signals, and these beings were dying because they had made the mistake of answering a signal. She immediately called Dr. Junho Lee, the facility director. Even though it was 3 in the morning, he answered his phone on the second ring. Gunho was in his 50s, with gray hair and tired eyes, but he was one of the smartest people Minji had ever met. "This better be important, Minji," he said in a sleepy voice. "Dr. Lee, you need to come here right now. I found something incredible." Junho arrived at the facility 30 minutes later, still wearing his pajamas under his coat. Minji showed him the signal and the translated message. They spent the next 2 hours studying the data together. The signal was definitely artificial, and it was definitely from another world. The beings who sent it had used enormous amounts of energy to broadcast their warning across space. "Look, look." At this pattern, Mingy said, pointing to her computer screen. The signal gets stronger and stronger, like they were using more and more power. Then it just stops completely. Junho nodded grimly. "Like something happened to them. We're trying to warn us," Minji whispered. "They knew they were going to die, but they used their last energy to send this message." Junho stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the giant radio telescope was still slowly turning, searching the sky. "Our protocol is very clear about this, Minji. We observe and record. We do not respond to signals from space. Never. But these beings are asking for help. They might still be alive. Or they might be dead, and responding could bring the same danger to Earth." Minji felt frustrated and sad. Somewhere in space, an entire civilization might be dying, and Earth was going to do nothing to help them. She understood the rules. But it felt wrong to ignore such a desperate message. Jun spent another hour reviewing the data. Then he went to his office to write a report for the government. The sun was starting to rise over the desert, painting the sky in beautiful colors of orange and pink. Soon, the day shift would arrive, and Minji could go home and sleep. But she could not stop thinking about the message. "We are the last of Kepler-4 to be. Our mistake was answering. These beings had made a choice to communicate with the universe, and it had destroyed them. Now they were warning Earth not to make the same mistake." Minji looked at the transmitter controls. The facility had powerful equipment that could send signals deep into space. It would be easy to send a response. Just a simple message to let these beings know that someone had heard their warning. She knew she should not do it. She knew Junho would be angry. She knew it could be dangerous. But the thought of those dying beings, alone in the darkness of space, was too much for her to bear. While Junho was busy in his office, Minji quietly powered up the transmitter array. Her fingers shook as she typed a simple message. Message received. Earth hears you. You are not alone. Right. She pressed the send button before she could change her mind. The signal left Earth at the speed of light, racing toward Kepler 44 to B. But something else had been listening, something much closer to home. Hyunwoo Park loved looking at the stars. Every clear night, he would set up his telescope in his backyard in Busan and spend hours watching the sky. He was not a professional scientist, just a high school teacher who enjoyed astronomy as a hobby. His neighbors thought he was a little strange, staying up so late to look at tiny dots of light, but Hyunwoo did not care. The universe was full of wonders, and he wanted to see as many as possible. 3 months after Dr. Minji Kim had sent her message into space, Hyunwoo noticed something odd. He was looking at the area beyond Neptune, where there should be nothing but empty space and maybe a few small rocks. But there were bright points of light where no stars should exist. At first, he thought his telescope was dirty or broken. He cleaned the lens carefully and looked again. The lights were still there, and they were moving. Asteroids moved very slowly, taking months or years to change position. Comets moved faster, but they left bright tails behind them. These objects moved in straight lines, changing direction suddenly like ships on an ocean. Hyunwoo felt his heart beating fast as he realized what he might be seeing. He took photographs through his telescope and measured the exact positions of the strange objects. Then he sent emails to every observatory and space agency he could find on the internet. Within 2 days, professional astronomers around the world were pointing their powerful telescopes toward the same area of space they found made everyone afraid. There were 17 huge objects, each one bigger than any ship humans had ever built. They were perfectly black, absorbing all light that hit them, making them almost invisible against the darkness of space. Dr. Sujin Park worked at Seoul National University, where she studied alien languages. Of course, no one had ever found real aliens before, so her job was mostly theoretical. She created computer programs that could analyze unknown languages and tried to guess how aliens might communicate. Most people thought her work was interesting, but not very useful. Everything changed when the government called her in the middle of the night. They told her that alien ships had been found near Earth, and they needed her help immediately. Sujin packed her computers and flew to a secret military base where scientists from many countries were working together. The alien ships were not trying to hide. In fact, they were broadcasting signals on many different radio frequencies. Sujin and her team worked for days to translate these signals. What they found was more terrifying than anyone had imagined. The aliens called themselves the Harvesters, and Earth was not their first target. Their language contained words for thousands of different planets and civilizations. They had a system for rating how developed each species was, like farmers checking if crops were ready to pick. The signals also contained detailed maps of Earth and information about human technology. They have been watching us for a long time, Sujin told the emergency meeting of world leaders. They know exactly how many nuclear weapons we have, how fast our computers work, and how many people live in each city. This is not a random attack. This is a planned harvest. The worst discovery was that the original signal from Kepler 44 to B had been fake. The dying civilization that warned Earth about hunters had never existed. The Harvesters had created that message as bait, like putting worms on a fishing hook. Any species that responded to the signal would reveal their location and technology. Level President Kim of South Korea listened to the reports with growing horror. The aliens were not interested in conquering Earth or stealing resources. They were farmers, and humans were their crops. They waited for civilizations to develop advanced technology, then they harvested everything useful and left the planets empty. Many worlds have they destroyed? President Kim asked. Sujin looked at her notes with sad eyes. Based on their language patterns, we estimate at least 10,000 civilizations over the past million years. They are very good at what they do. The alien ships move slowly but steadily toward Earth. They arrange themselves in a perfect sphere around the solar system, making escape impossible. Their black holes seem to bend space around them, making them appear larger and smaller. At the same time, human physics could not explain how they moved without engines or fuel. Military leaders around the world prepared for war, but they knew it was hopeless. The alien ships were each 50 kilometers long, larger than most cities. They moved through space like it was water, ignoring gravity and momentum. Human weapons had never been tested against technology so advanced as the ships got closer to Earth. They began broadcasting a message on every radio and television frequency. The message was repeated in perfect English, Korean, Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, and dozens of other human languages. The voice was calm and emotionless, like a computer reading a script. Your silence might have saved you. Your voice has doomed you. We are the harvesters. We have come to collect what you have grown. Do not resist. Resistance only causes unnecessary suffering. Your species has reached optimal development. The harvest will begin soon. People all over the world heard this message and felt deep fear. The aliens were not angry or cruel. They spoke like farmers talking about picking apples or cutting wheat. To them, humans were just another crop that had finally become ripe. Dr. Mingi Kim heard the message in her laboratory and realized what her curiosity had cost humanity. Her simple response to a fake distress call had revealed Earth's location to monsters who traveled between stars. Collecting civilizations like vegetables from a garden, the harvest was about to begin. The first thing people noticed was that their phones stopped working. Not all at once, but slowly, like a disease spreading across the world. Text messages took hours to send, then days, then never arrived at all. Social media websites became slower and slower until they stopped loading. Completely. Within a week, the internet that had connected billions of people simply died. Captain Minho Choi stood on the deck of his aircraft carrier, watching the alien ships through powerful binoculars. The 17 black vessels hung in the sky like giant shadows so large they blocked out parts of the sun. His orders were simple. Attack the nearest ship with everything they had. His squadron of fighter jets was the most advanced in the world, carrying missiles that could destroy entire buildings. All pilots, this is your Captain Minho, spoke into his radio. Hey. We are about to make history. We're the first humans to fight. Aliens, make your families proud. The 12 fighter jets launched from the carrier deck and flew toward the nearest alien ship at maximum speed. Minho led the formation, his heart pounding with fear and excitement. The alien vessel was so large it filled his entire view, like flying toward a floating mountain made of black metal. Weapons locked on target, his wingman reported, ready to fire. Fire all missiles, Minho ordered. Dozens of missiles streaked through the air toward the alien ship. Each one carried enough explosive power to sink a battleship. Minho watched through his helmet display as the missiles approached their target, expecting to see a massive explosion. Instead, the missiles passed right through the ship as if it was made of air. They continued flying into empty space until they ran out of fuel and fell toward the ocean. The alien vessel did not react at all. It continued hanging in the sky, completely undamaged. What just happened? Minho's wingman asked in confusion. I don't know, Minho replied, but his voice was shaking. Tried the machine guns. The fighter jets flew closer and fired thousands of bullets at the alien ship. The bullets also passed through the vessel without causing any damage. It was like trying to shoot a ghost or a shadow. The ship was there, blocking the sun and casting darkness on the ocean below, but somehow their weapons could not touch it. Captain, the alien ship is doing something, another pilot reported. Minho looked up and saw a section of the alien vessel becoming solid. A small opening appeared in the black hole, and something emerged that looked like a beam of light. The beam moved slowly across the sky, scanning the area like a giant flashlight. Aircraft, retreat immediately, Minho ordered. But it was too late. The light beam touched one of the fighter jets, and the plane simply disappeared. There was no explosion, no debris, no radio signal. The pilot and his aircraft vanished completely, as if they had never existed. The beam continued moving and touched another jet. It also disappeared without a trace. Minho dove his plane toward the ocean, flying as fast as possible to escape the scanning beam. Behind him, he could hear his pilots screaming in terror as their friends vanished one by one. By the time he reached the safety of the aircraft carrier, only 4 of his 12 jets remained. Meanwhile, in cities around the world, people were discovering that their normal lives were becoming impossible. GPS systems in cars and phones stopped working, making it difficult to find directions to anywhere. Weather forecasts became completely wrong because the satellites that track storms were no longer functioning. Airplanes could not fly safely without GPS and weather data. So air travel stopped completely. Dr. Soojin Park had moved her research to an underground laboratory in Seoul's subway system. The government thought the aliens might not detect them if they worked deep underground. She and her team were using old radio equipment to listen to signals from space. Trying to understand what the harvesters were planning, what they discovered was more frightening than anyone had imagined. The radio telescopes that still worked were picking up signals from all over the galaxy. Every signal was the same desperate warning that Dr. Mingy Kim had received months ago. They hunt by signal. Do not respond. These messages are coming from hundreds of different star systems, Soojin explained to the other scientists. Each one is from a different species, but they all have the same warning. The harvesters have been doing this for a very long time. She showed them a map of the galaxy, with dots marking where each warning signal had come from. There were thousands of dots, scattered across the entire galaxy like stars in the night sky. Each dot represented a dead civilization that had been harvested by the aliens. "We are not special," Soojin said quietly. "We are just the newest victims in a hunt that has been going on for millions of years." Above ground, the alien ships had positioned themselves over every major city on Earth. New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Sao Paulo. Each city had a massive black vessel hanging in the sky above it. The ships did not attack, but they were clearly studying everything below them. Sometimes beams of strange light would emerge from the ships and scan buildings or neighborhoods. Anyone caught in these beams would simply vanish, taken up into the alien vessels for unknown purposes. Families would lose a father, a mother, a child. With no warning and no explanation, people began to understand that the aliens were not trying to destroy Earth quickly. They were taking their time, studying humans like scientists studying insects. The harvesters were dismantling human civilization piece by piece, cutting off all the connections that held the world together. Without phones, internet, or television, countries could not coordinate their defenses. Without GPS or weather satellites, transportation and commerce stopped working. The aliens were not destroying humanity with bombs or weapons. They were isolating humans from each other, making them helpless and alone. The hunt had begun, and humans were the prey. The basement of Seoul National University had become the hidden headquarters for Earth's last hope. Scientists from around the world had gathered in the underground laboratories, working by candlelight and battery-powered computers. The air smelled of fear and determination as the brightest minds on the planet tried to find a way to fight back. Against the harvesters, Dr. Soojin Park had barely slept in weeks. Her eyes were red from staring at computer screens, analyzing the alien communication signals. She had made copies of every transmission the harvesters had sent, studying the patterns, like a detective looking for clues. Finally, she found something important. "Everyone, please listen to this," Soojin called out to the other scientists in the basement. She played a recording of the alien signals, but she had slowed it down and filtered out the background noise. Hidden beneath the main message was another signal, very fast and very complex. "What are we hearing?" asked Dr. Kunjin Bey, a quantum physicist who had been working on advanced communication systems before the invasion. "This is how they talk to each other," Soojin explained.
The messages we hear are just for us humans, but underneath they
are constantly sending information between their ships. Look at this pattern. She showed them a visual display of the hidden signals. lines of light connected points on a map, showing how information flowed between the 17 alien ships. The pattern looked like a spiderweb, with each ship connected to all the others. "They're like a hive mind," Sujin continued. "Each ship knows what all the other ships are thinking. That is how they can coordinate their movements so perfectly. But this also gives them a weakness." Dr. Kunjin studied the data with growing excitement. He had spent years researching quantum entanglement, the strange physics that allowed particles to be connected across vast distances. If we can disrupt their quantum network, their coordination system would collapse. It would be isolated and confused, like cutting the telephone lines between different parts of an army. The idea was brilliant, but there was one huge problem. Creating quantum interference powerful enough to affect 17 massive alien ships would require enormous amounts of energy. No single power plant or transmitter on Earth could generate that much power, especially since most of them had been destroyed or shut down by the aliens. Dr. Minji Kim, who had started this whole crisis by responding to the fake distress signal, had been working quietly in the corner. She looked up from her calculations with a strange smile on her face. "What if we do not need one massive transmitter?" she suggested. "What if we use every communication device left on Earth?" The other scientists stared at her in confusion. Mingi walked to the whiteboard and began drawing diagrams. "The aliens are using quantum entanglement to stay connected. But quantum systems are very delicate. If we can create enough chaos on the right frequency, we might be able to break their connection. Instead of one big signal, we use millions of small signals, all broadcasting at the same time." Dr. Kungjin's eyes widened as he understood what she was proposing. "We turn every radio, every television transmitter, every cell phone tower into a weapon. Not by making them more powerful, but by making them work together." The plan they developed was called Operation Babel, named after the ancient story of a tower that reached toward heaven. They would need to coordinate every surviving communication device on the planet to broadcast simultaneously on a specific frequency. The combined chaos of millions of signals would hopefully shatter the aliens. Quantum Network Captain Minho Choi volunteered to lead teams of soldiers and civilians to reactivate abandoned broadcasting stations. Most radio and television stations had been shut down when their satellite connections failed, but the equipment was still there. Teams of volunteers began traveling across Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Americas, bringing old transmitters back to life. The message spread through amateur radio operators and emergency broadcasts. Day 127, Operation Babel. Everyone broadcast simultaneously on frequency 1420.40575 MHz at 0000 GMT. People who still had shortwave radios heard the message and passed it along to their neighbors. The word spread like wildfire through the scattered communities of survivors. Dr. Sunmi Jang had set up a small laboratory in a bunker in the Australian desert. She was working on the most important calculation of her life, finding the exact frequency that would cause the most damage to the alien quantum network. After days of complex mathematics, she found the answer. It has to be 1420.40575 MHz, she announced over the emergency radio network. This is the same frequency that hydrogen atoms use when they change energy levels. It is the most common signal in the universe, and it should create maximum interference with their quantum systems. As the countdown began, people all over the world prepared for Operation Babel. Ham radio operators cleaned their equipment and prepared to broadcast. Television stations that had been dark for months powered up their transmitters. Even people with simple cell phones and walkie-talkies prepared to add their voices to the global chorus of noise. The plan was simple but desperate. At exactly midnight Greenwich Mean Time, every human communication device on Earth would broadcast on the same frequency. They would create so much chaos and noise that the alien hive mind would be shattered like glass hit by a hammer. In the Seoul basement, the scientists watched their clocks and held their breath. In a few hours, they would discover if human ingenuity could defeat technology from the stars. The fate of Earth depended on making as much noise as possible. At exactly the right moment, the countdown had begun. The moment had arrived. Basement laboratories, abandoned radio stations, and hidden bunkers around the world. People watched their clocks tick toward midnight. Dr. Minji Kim sat in her makeshift control center in the California desert, her finger hovering over the transmission button. Her heart was beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. 10 seconds, announced Dr. Sujin Park over the shortwave radio network. 9:7. Across the planet, millions of people held their breath. Ham radio operators in there, home workshops, television engineers in empty broadcast stations, soldiers at military bases, and ordinary families with cell phones all waited for the same moment. 3:2. Now. At exactly midnight Greenwich Mean Time, Earth became the loudest planet in the solar system. Every working radio transmitter on the planet began broadcasting on frequency 1420.40575 MHz at the same time. The sound was incredible. Ham radio operators played recordings of their children laughing and singing. Television stations broadcast old music mixed with static and noise. Military bases sent out radar signals and sonar pings. Cell phone towers pushed out recordings of human voices speaking in English, Spanish, Chinese, Arabic, Hindi, and hundreds of other languages. Even people with simple devices joined the chorus. Families connected their phones to create mesh networks, adding their whispers and shouts to the growing wall of sound. Children sang nursery rhymes into walkie-talkies, while teenagers played music through their gaming headsets. Old people shared stories through CB radios they had not used in decades. For the first time in months, Earth was truly noisy. But this was not the organized, predictable signals that had attracted the harvesters. This was beautiful, chaotic, completely human noise. It was the sound of a species that could never stay quiet, never follow rules perfectly, and never stop talking to each other. Dr. Minji Kim watched her instruments as the cacophony spread across the electromagnetic spectrum. The signal was not just reaching the alien ships above Earth, it was racing out into space at the speed of light, carrying humanity's voice to the stars. The effect on the harvester fleet was immediate, devastating. The 17 massive black ships that had hung in perfect formation for months suddenly began behaving strangely. They started drifting apart from each other, like boats whose anchor chains had been cut. The quantum entanglement that had connected their hive mind was breaking down under the assault of organized chaos, Captain. Minho Choi stood on a hilltop outside Seoul with powerful binoculars, watching the alien ship above his city. The massive vessel, which had been perfectly still for so long, began spinning slowly, then faster. The spin became a wobble, and the wobble became wild, uncontrolled rotation. It is working. Doctor! Sujin Park shouted over the radio network. Their formation is breaking apart. The ships are losing coordination. But the harvesters were not defenseless. As their hive mind shattered, the individual ships began attacking in panic and confusion. Energy beams lashed out randomly, carving deep trenches through mountains and turning lakes into steam. The difference was that now they were acting like scared animals instead of calculating predators. There was no strategy, no plan, just desperate violence. Dr. Kung Jin Bei monitored the quantum interference from his underground laboratory. His instruments showed the alien communication network collapsing like a house made of cards. "Keep broadcasting," he announced to the world. "The quantum dissonance is growing stronger. We cannot rebuild their network while we maintain this." Chaos. Something wonderful was happening alongside the technical success. Humans who had lived in terrified silence for months were finding their voices again. Radio operators began sharing jokes between the official broadcasts. Children sang happy songs into their parents' phones. Scientists read poetry over emergency frequencies. The noise was not just disrupting alien technology, it was reconnecting human civilization in New York. A ham radio operator named David played his daughter's violin recital for anyone listening. In London, an elderly woman read her favorite recipe for chocolate cake over ACB radio. In Tokyo, a group of teenagers broadcast themselves singing popular songs. In Mumbai, a father told bedtime stories to children across the city through a makeshift radio network. The cacophony of human voices, music, laughter, and love was more powerful than any weapon humanity had ever built. One by one, the harvester ships began to retreat. Some crashed into asteroids as their navigation systems failed completely. Others simply vanished, probably escaping to whatever dimension they used for faster-than-light travel. The largest ship, which had been positioned over the Pacific Ocean, managed to send one final message before disappearing. The voice was no longer calm and emotionless. It sounded confused and almost frightened. Impossible. The prey species never coordinate. They cannot harmonize chaos.
How?
Then the ship vanished. Like smoke in the wind, as dawn broke over different time zones around Earth, the broadcasting continued. But the desperate emergency had become a celebration. People were no longer making noise to fight aliens. They were making noise because they were human, and humans love to communicate with each other. Dr. Minji Kim stood in the California desert, watching the last alien ship disappear beyond Mars. The radio telescope that had started this whole adventure pointed toward the morning sky. It was ready to listen to the universe once again. She picked up her microphone and broadcast one final message on the frequency that had changed everything. "This is Earth. We hear you, Kepler. 442b. We hear you, and we are still here. The frequency you warned us about was not the wrong one." After all, humanity had learned that sometimes the best way to fight monsters is to be loudly, chaotically, beautifully human.